So for a long time, I was under the impression that the first Dragon Age video game was considered the best one. However, a couple of years ago, when I did my Dragon Age 2 video, I was surprised to find out that a lot of people actually considered the first one to be terrible, and that the second one to be the best. Which is an interesting take to have, for sure. And even though I definitely still consider the second one to be the definitive worst one, it's really made me start to wonder that if my impression of Dragon Age Origins was hidden behind rose-tinted glasses. So I decided I'm gonna go back and find out if Dragon Age Origins was as good as I remember. Now, right off the bat from playing this game, there was something that was very apparent to me, and that this game is a lot goofier than I remember it being. When BioWare was developing this game, they were selling it under the idea that this was a dark fantasy RPG. And that meant serious, sexy, grim, and gritty. And I have to say, some of those things clearly did not translate well in the final product. For one, the animations themselves just make this game look incredibly ridiculous because everybody's moving so jaggedly. Oftentimes it reminds me of the Rankin Bass films, you know, like Rudolph and Santa Comes to Town, especially the sexy scenes, which there's absolutely nothing sexy about it whatsoever. Also, look at these goofy-ass werewolves. What the fuck? Now, as a teenager, all I needed to think that something was grim and gritty was blood and boob. And this game definitely has plenty of it. I mean, you can't have a single conversation where there isn't somebody completely drenched head to toe in blood. There's so much that's just comical, like it's a Monty Python scene.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch.
But I think the biggest issue this game has when it comes to trying to actually fulfill its dark fantasy ideas is with the companions, because literally every single companion in this game is a comedic genius. I mean, literally the first time you meet Alistair, he's making jokes left and right.
Should I have asked her to write a note?
And even though this character is definitely the epitome of the comedy problems that this game has, literally every single one of these companions is making jokes non-stop. It's like, just please, somebody's kid is about to die. This is not the appropriate place for this. I mean, to be fair, it's definitely not as bad of a problem as it is in Dragon Age 2, where they took the whole comedy thing and turned up the turbo bass. And then what happened next was a total disgrace. However, it really kind of breaks the immersion that you have with the whole serious dark fantasy tone that the game is trying to represent for you. And that's kind of a problem. And speaking of companions, they basically all suck. And that's because they're so incredibly one-dimensional. Pretty much the only traits that they have for their personality is that they're hilarious and that they have a terrible backstory, which for some reason is also hilarious.
Just what would you do if your mother died?
Before or after I stopped laughing.
Right, very creepy. Forget I asked.
Now, I'm sure that's probably a little bit blasphemous to say, because especially since I know a lot of people for some reason really love Alistair. And as a kid, I seriously hated that character. I could not stand him. As an adult, though, I can definitely see why people like him. I don't know, I guess he's husbando material, but yeah, he's not that great, to be honest.
So there you have it. Now can we move on?
The only companion who actually has any dimension to them and is actually interesting is only acquirable by either making the worst possible decisions of all time, or by making some very specific decisions that I definitely screwed up, and I'm not about to go and replay half of this whole video game just so I can have the good ending. And that character is none other than Logan Maktir. That's right, the villain of the game. And the reason why he's so interesting as opposed to all the other characters is that it feels like there's actually some personality going on with this character. For one, this guy is not funny at all. There's absolutely nothing that this guy says that could be taken as a joke in any way. And even though he's an incredibly unlikable character, having him as a companion is actually really interesting because you get to hear his side of the story and why he made all the choices he did. And even though it seems like he's only making those decisions because he's a bad guy, and that's what bad guys do, there's actually a lot more layers to him. And it's really more about his fears and insecurities about the war that he fought in before this whole game started.
I've seen painted, masked lords beat an old farmer to death with riding crops. To this day, I don't know why. Is that hate? I saw good, sensible men fight armored chevaliers with nothing. No weapons, no armies, not even hope of success to see the occupation end. Is that hate?
Also, did I mention that he doesn't make any jokes? I really appreciate that about him. The only other companion that I kind of like, you know, aside from the dog, which, I mean, it's a dog. You can't not like him. I named mine Paparino. I think that's a pretty cute name. But the only other companion aside from Logan and the dog that I actually like is Vemren. And even though he constantly makes jokes as well, he kind of reminds me of the Antonio Banderas Zorro character. Except if you don't get his friendship up high enough, he betrays you and you have to kill him. And also, he kind of sucks. Speaking of companions, there is a big issue that I really have, and that is once you get them, they start out at the level that you currently are, which means that they're stuck with whatever traits that the game decided to give them, so you can't customize them in any way. And that's really annoying, because there's a lot of traits that are completely useless. As a matter of fact, pretty much 90% of the traits that you can pick are terrible or are just a slightly different version of a trait that you already have. So it's like, I don't need two of these. So I ended up not even being able to use Vemren at all because his lockpicking trait was super low. So I wasn't able to open any chests. So I guess I'm not using this guy, which means I'm also not going to get his friendship up high enough with me, which means I guess I have to kill him. So thanks, game. Fuck you. It's also a huge problem if you want to get Logan because, you know, he starts out at the max level. Why would they do this? Another big issue has to do with the way that you control your companions. And even though it's pretty similar to what they did in KOTOR, there's one big thing that's missing that I think hurts this game drastically. And that's the lack of being able to stack on different attacks. In KOTOR, you could choose a bunch of different things you want to do. So that way you could just kind of sit back and control other companions. While this other companion over here is doing exactly what you need them to do. And in this game, it does not work that way. You either have to continuously switch between them to make sure they're doing all what you need, or you can use tactics, which I gotta say is an interesting inclusion. I don't hate the idea of the tactics, but the implementation of it is really bad. And it's really difficult to actually get the character to do what you actually want them to do. So oftentimes they're just kind of going fucking off doing whatever the fuck they want. And it's just like, no, I need you to revive our companions. Why are you just attacking some random person? What the fuck is wrong with you, Morrigan? And the last thing I have to say that's sort of about companions, but mostly just about leveling up, is the fact that it never really feels like you're actually getting stronger. And I know this is a big issue with a lot of RPGs, where they kind of auto-level up all the enemies to meet your level, which just makes it feel like, sure, you've got slightly cooler armor, but you're still killing this guy just as easily as you killed him in the very beginning. Speaking of armors, by the way, basically every armor and weapon in this game looks so fucking stupid. There are a couple helmets that look cool, and that's it, as a matter of fact. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Literally none of the armors look that cool except for the one that Duncan wears, but he only gets to wear that. You can't have that, so that sucks. And for some reason, the whole thought process of the endgame armors was, should we make them look super cool? Nah, let's just make them ginormous. I mean, I get that it's like a World of Warcraft thing. I'm sure some people think that ginormous armor looks amazing. But personally, I just think it looks really stupid. It just kind of looks like you're wearing like foam costume armor that a cosplayer would wear, not actual real life armor. And really, it just kind of makes it disappointing because no matter what you do, you just constantly have to look at this stupid, terrible armor. It's really terrible. There's also a big problem with your characters trying to find pathing in combat, which is incredibly annoying because you'll just be like trying to fight them and your character will just be like, oh, I gotta get to him. I'm so close, but your character won't attack him because there's some issue with the game's code or whatever. It's just like, fuck, we're gonna lose this battle, you idiot. Also, by the way, you get stunned like non-stop in this game. It's especially terrible when you're fighting the dragons because every single attack flies you through the air. So sometimes you'll run up to them and you won't even get a hit in. They'll just hit you and throw you through the air again. I'd rather them be bullet sponges than this, which to be fair, they already are bullet sponges. So what the fuck? BioWare, why did you do this to me? Speaking of dragons, by the way, I really appreciate that in this game, even though it's called Dragon Age, the dragons are like a rare battle and something that you really kind of have to prepare for, and you feel epic when you defeat them, as opposed to something, you know, a game, you know, something like Skyrim, for example, where literally every 2 seconds there's a fucking dragon. He's just like, by the way, I'm here and I'm gonna kill you. It's like, oh my god, just leave me alone, dragon, please. I've killed like 500 of your kind. This is not enjoyable anymore, Dragon. As for the story though, I have to say I still really enjoyed it. Overall, the entire time I kept on feeling like, damn, I gotta get to the next thing. I gotta find out what this is. Even though I've already beaten it before and I pretty much know how it goes, it still was very compelling to play through. And I gotta say, that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, you can so easily just completely fuck up the story by having a villain that isn't either interesting or feels dangerous, whereas this guy, he's both interesting and dangerous. And as soon as you start talking to him, you're like, damn, he's got some good points, though. I gotta say, you know, maybe he's right. Yeah, I like Logan, by the way. I don't know if you noticed. The only negative thing I really have to say about the story is there's not enough of it that has to do with the whole Darkspawn and the Blight itself. A lot of it is just kind of random stuff, which, to be fair, I do think is good. I enjoyed that there are situations going on outside of the Blight, and even though the Blight is a major problem, everybody's like, we have our own problems to deal with, and if you want us to help you, you gotta help us, which I think is a really interesting angle to go with. But with that said, I think there could be just a little bit more about the Blight itself, especially making you feel like it really is a threat. And maybe that was on purpose, because as the game goes, it kind of feels like the Blight itself isn't actually as big of a threat as everybody seems to think it is. And as long as everybody gets along and defeats it, it's no problem. And if they were trying to do that, then I say good job, because right from the beginning, they're talking about how the Blight itself is almost defeated. As long as they kind of keep up what they're doing, they'll probably win. And the only reason why they lost is because, you know, Logan was a fucking idiot and decided to flee the battle.
A tactical error.
And then as soon as you kind of bring everything back together and resolve that situation, it's just like 10 minutes later, the Blight is over. One thing that really did surprise me, though, is how similar this game actually is to Dragon Age Inquisition. And it's given me a lot more respect for that game, because the first time I played Dragon Age Inquisition, I was like, this game is good, but I wish it was more like the first game. And now going back and actually playing the first game, I realized that they went back to their roots a lot more than I had given them credit for. And it really makes me want to kind of go back to Dragon Age Inquisition at some point, because I think I'm going to be pleasantly surprised and probably have a better opinion of it than I originally did while playing it. Also, I'm willing to bet that the same people who said Dragon Age Inquisition was terrible are also the same people who love Dragon Age 2. I mean, you know, I have a feeling there's a major connection. And I can definitely understand it, because they are two very different games. I mean, I can't understand why you would like Dragon Age 2, but I can understand that if you did like it, you probably won't like the other ones, because, you know, they're actually good games. Also, something I like to point out that I just think is a little bit, interesting is that a big part of this game revolves around the elves experiencing a lot of racism from the humans, but they almost make it seem like it's okay. I mean, the whole Dalish caravan, which is clearly based off of the Romani people, is supposed to be that, like, the humans hate them, but the whole questline just kind of makes it seem justified that the humans should hate them, which is kind of strange. And also, the only elf character that you get happens to backstab you, so I'm just wondering, what angle are you going for? It's almost like somebody wrote, like, racist stereotypes for the elves, and then another person looked at that and just thought that that was their just normal traits. So they just wrote this whole racist storyline. So anyway, that's my interesting take on this video game. I have to say, it's definitely not as good as I remember, but it still really holds up, and I would be really interested in seeing a remaster of this game, because I think if they improved the animations, ironed out some of the bugs, and improved a lot of the leveling up and trait problems, this could be easily a classic, amazing video game that everybody would love. If you want to hear me complain more about Dragon Age 2, you can click that right here, and at some point, I would really love to talk about Dragon Age Inquisition. I don't know when I'll get to it, but look forward to that in the future. All right, goodbye.